Today, we'll be discussing the latest update with the NTT IndyCar Series schedule. Along with that, our feature story about the safety protocol after a major wreck has occurred on the racetrack, and all the latest motorsports racing news right here on Grid Tonight. Hello everyone, welcome to Grid Tonight. Joe Samaniego here. So the track unfortunately did report that there was a fatal accident at the site of the Berlin Prix next week. We are definitely thinking of everyone involved in the Formula E community. As Formula E Zone did report, this is the first fatality that has occurred at a Formula E track, whether it's setting up or tearing down the track or during the race day weekend. Of course, a lot of times when we think about auto racing and the risk involved, we also have to think about those track workers, whether it's the marshals or the people putting together the tracks. They're just as important as the race car drivers, and we send our best wishes to everyone involved in the tragic accident that had occurred over there, and to the special family and loved ones of the victim that had passed away. Now we'll start off with our main story, the IndyCar Series and the 2020 season update. Yesterday, it was announced by IndyCar the cancellation of 3 West Coast races. Those 3 West Coast races are Laguna Seca, Wide Tech Raceway doubleheader, and the Portland Grand Prix at Portland International Raceway. Now, these were all canceled due to response to the pandemic situation in the state of California and Oregon. Now, both tracks have said for 2021, they are looking at making dates for those years, so that way they will be back on the IndyCar schedule. One of the big things, Laguna Seca, they still have another year in their current contract through 2021. For Portland International Raceway, this was the final year of their contract, as this was going to be the 3rd year of the Portland Grand Prix. Unlike NASCAR, where most of the tracks are owned by NASCAR or SMI, IndyCar deals with a lot of private track owners. In the case of Laguna Seca, it's really interesting. The local county owns that, and the city of Portland owns Portland International Raceway. So it'll be really interesting to see. Hopefully they all get a date made up. As for the 3 new races to come in to replace those 3 include an additional race in Mid-Ohio, in which the new race will be August 8th. Wide Technology Raceway at Gateway has another date of August 29th. And Indianapolis Motor Speedway Harvest Grand Prix October 2nd will also host another race, making that race a doubleheader weekend. Now, IndyCar had said they hope this will be the last announcement for the IndyCar season schedule to be updated. Of course, this year with the pandemic, just about every series had to modify their schedule. IndyCar, of course, they've done a lot of modifications, including St. Petersburg Grand Prix, which was the first race of the year, being canceled and now being the last race of the year. One of the big things, though, September is an empty month. Nothing in the month of September for the IndyCar Series, considering that this month we're going to have 1 race and then, of course, the 104th running of the Indianapolis 500. With all these double headers, that means out of the 5 remaining race weekends, 3 of them are double headers. Kobe, what challenges does this make for all the teams, knowing that we got the next race weekend is now a double header and so many more double headers ahead?
It's definitely going to be challenging for the teams, since the turnaround time in between races is going to be so fast. Like, for example, if you crash in Saturday's race, and then the chassis is a complete loss and you got to go to a backup car, then you're gonna have to work really hard in order to get the car ready for Sunday's race. So you need to make sure that you come out of Saturday's race clean and make sure you don't make any mistakes, or sometimes unfortunately you get caught up in other drivers' mistakes and whatever. But yeah, these double headers is definitely going to be a lot for the teams. But as they've already proven this season, is they can totally handle it. And thinking about Mid-Ohio doubleheader weekend, coming up, that's definitely going to be a brutal doubleheader, because a lot of the IndyCar drivers have said that Mid-Ohio is one of the most physical tracks on the schedule. So they're definitely going to have to make sure that they're well prepared to take on the Mid-Ohio sports car course.
Mid-Ohio, that's going to be a really tough track for everyone. Of course, last year, Scott Dixon, who is the current points leader, he comes in as pulling the favorites and to be there twice. It'd be really interesting to see if he could do a sweep out there. Now, the cancellation of all these West Coast races for the IndyCar series means that out of the United States, only NASCAR and their West Coast swing have been able to race in the West Coast. Of course, the race at Infineon Speedway was canceled this year. Should NASCAR be concerned about the Las Vegas playoff race later on in the schedule?
Well, I'm not sure if it's something that we should be concerned with right now because right now we're at the end of July. August is coming up, and we still have a little ways to go until the playoff race at Las Vegas. And right now, I'm looking at the official numbers from the CDC, and right now the state of Nevada has almost 45,000 confirmed cases of the virus, and sadly 760 deaths. And now looking at the data, it looks like at the beginning of July, that's when after the 4th of July, that's when the cases in Nevada started to go up, and it looks like right now it looks like a little downward trend. So if the cases keep going downwards in the state of Nevada, then maybe the playoff race at Las Vegas will be okay. But for right now, I think a lot can change between now and then. But it's definitely going to be a fluid situation. I feel like fluid situation has definitely been one of the major drinking words in the year 2020.
It definitely has been a situation where, for everybody, just trying to follow all the changes of all the different series, the schedules. I know, as you mentioned, it does look like maybe the cases are starting to go down in Nevada. This is something definitely local health authorities, NASCAR will be evaluating and seeing what happens with that race. Now, one of the things that's been really interesting this year, we've seen how Formula One has been announcing new races, including at tracks they haven't been to in a while, such as Imola, and even brand new tracks, such as the one in Portugal, the Portimao circuit. Despite IndyCar saying that they're not going to add, or hopefully no more, schedule changes in the future, would you be surprised if they then add another race in the month of September to fill that void?
I mean, since everything's been so crazy this year, I'm just thankful that we have a 2020 IndyCar season because in March, and when the entire sports world shut down, I was afraid that that was it for racing for the year. And yes, it's definitely not an ideal situation to have an entire month without racing. The no IndyCar races in September, and then you finish up with the Harvest Grand Prix at the Indy Road Course, and then the Firestone Grand Prix on the streets of St. Pete to end the season in October, and then you're done. And definitely for the month of September, I think it would really be interesting if IndyCar tried to add at least one race or two, so it's not such a large gap. But for right now, just thankful that we have IndyCar racing to watch the season.
Definitely thankful that we do have the IndyCar season going on, and of course, all the racing series that are able to compete this year. We're definitely going to be following the news in case there is any update in regards to future races in the month of September. Now, for all our viewers watching, of course, as many of you all know, the Grid Network is headquartered in Portland, Oregon. We had originally hoped to bring you live coverage of the weekend at Portland International Raceway when the NTT IndyCar Series did arrive for the Portland Grand Prix. Unfortunately, that won't be happening, but we here understand what the decision made. It was in the best interest for IndyCar, Portland International Raceway, and the city of Portland, and we stand by their decision.
Yeah, next we're gonna look at what happened actually last Thursday night at Kansas Speedway, and we saw some major accidents coming out of Kansas Speedway this past weekend, especially Ryan Preece's scary crash hitting the inside wall nearly head on. In 2002, Sterling Marlin's best chance at a Cup Series championship came to an abrupt end after a near head-on collision with the outside wall exiting turn 2, and at the time there was not a safer barrier there, and the backstretch was filled with grass. But with the safety improvements, Ryan Preece not only was okay, he even put on his mask after climbing out of the car. And if Ryan Preece can experience such a violent crash and quickly put on his mask, then so can you. Yeah, and Ryan did the mandatory trip to the Enfield Medical Center and was medically cleared. And the next day, but over in Spain, Marc Marquez was medically cleared to race the second MotoGP weekend, and after practice and qualifying, Marquez withdrew, leaving many wondering if he should have been cleared to race in the first place. And each series has a protocol that is followed after a major accident or any accident in which the driver is unable to finish the race. And in the past, the medical center trip wasn't mandatory, leaving some drivers to go with undiagnosed injuries, including potential concussions. And last year on HBO Real Sports, Dale Earnhardt Jr. shared how, despite asking for help after a hard crash at Auto Club Speedway in 2002, he didn't seek medical attention. It wasn't until in 2014 when NASCAR mandated a medical exam at the track medical center if a driver was involved in a crash and the car is considered, disabled. And the medical center trip allows medical diagnosis in the case of a concussion or serious injury that prevents a driver from safely competing in the following race. But what happens after a driver is not cleared to drive due to a concussion or injury? And all the major racing series have requirements on medical clearance for a driver to complete before returning to action. And the NTT IndyCar series gives the series president the final say after a medical recommendation from the IndyCar medical director. This, along with an impact test and gradually increase in practice, and gradually increase speed in practice to ensure the driver is cleared. And this is very different from years past when it was common for drivers to compete while injured. And some of the most infamous examples are Ricky Rudd racing with tape holding his eyes wide open, and Davey Allison with broken ribs and finishing third at Talladega, and Brad Keselowski scoring a victory at Pocono Raceway after breaking his ankle in a testing crash at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. However, many questions remain if injuries played a factor in Greg Moore's fatal crash at Auto Club Speedway in 1999. Greg Moore was riding his scooter when a car crashed into him. Moore suffered lacerations, a bruised right hip, and a fractured index finger on his right hand. And during qualifying, John Beekes interviewed Greg Moore, asking if he should have been racing the next day. And the following day, kart medical staff cleared him to race with an improvised brace and steering wheel and some medical shots to reduce the sensation of pain. And sadly, on the 10th lap, Greg Moore lost control, exited turn two, and crashed into the inside wall at Auto Club Speedway, which had no safer barrier, and the grass, which contributed to the car getting airborne. And this past weekend, Marc Marquez had planned to return to the racetrack after undergoing successful surgery in which a titanium plate and several screws were placed in his fractured arm. The Honda rider broke his right humerus in a heavy crash in the prior weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. And during the free practice session number 4, Marquez reported his elbow was losing strength, and the situation became, as Marquez described, as dangerous. Marquez said he can sleep well with the decision he made not to compete. While the culture of racing, while injured, has changed, still drivers will always want to race and compete. They got the fire burning inside them, and despite being injured, and now series have more discretion on giving the final approval. Allowing a driver to come back to the track. And it makes me think of a more recent example. A few years ago, Noah Gragson was supposed to be racing in the NASCAR Truck Series race at Pocono, but he was feeling really sick on the morning of the race, and NASCAR did not allow him to compete. So Eric Jones had to fill in for him in the Kyle Busch Motorsports truck. And thinking about Noah Gragson's incident with NASCAR not allowing him to compete last week, on the Grid Live pre-race show, Joe, you said it was courageous considering the risks at hand. Did Marc Marquez make the right decision to attempt an early comeback, or should MotoGP have stepped in and declared him unfit to race?
That is a question that a lot of people have been revisiting since this last weekend. I know as a racer, these guys and girls, they want to race. That's what they want to do. They're athletes, they train for this. And so often, just like in any sport, even if you're hurt, you want to compete. The series does have a role ensuring that whoever's out there on the track is safe and fully capable of handling the situation, whether it's driving a stock car, a Formula One car, or a MotoGP motorcycle. One of the things I can only imagine MotoGP is probably reconsidering is the protocol of after a major surgery or accident, should there be a set timetable? We saw Alex Rins and Cal Crutchlow. They had injuries. They are not racing 100% they finished towards the back of the pack, and Cal even exited the race briefly, but as other riders were falling off the track and out of the race, he rejoined to see if he could gain points. So there's a lot of questions out there as to where does the series step in and says, okay, you have this accident, we should have a table of this length of time where you are away from the track to recover, or allow the driver and trust the driver's judgment to come back to the track. That's a discussion I think MotoGP and possibly others are having after this past race weekend.
Yeah, and Joe, me, you, and everybody else in the motorsports community fully understand that motorsports is one of the most dangerous sports on the entire planet. And for our viewers, I want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine this. Restrictor plate racing at Daytona and Talladega in a tight pack, inches apart at 200 miles per hour, driving a Formula One car in anger at Spa through the downhill section of Eau Rouge and uphill section known as Radion. LMP1 hybrid powered prototypes lapping GT cars at night on the Mulsanne Straight. Indy cars entering turn 1 at Indianapolis Motor Speedway at over 220 miles per hour. Lots of danger is involved all across the world in all disciplines of motorsports, and I truly consider race car drivers to be daredevils. And Joe, here's my question for you. Where is the line drawn when a series tells a driver they are not racing today simply for their own good?
Honestly, the series, in my opinion, does have the ability to just tell a driver, if for your own good, you cannot compete today. The biggest reason why is because if something was to happen, the negative publicity that would follow. You risk sponsorships wanting to leave. There's all sorts of risk, and I could safely say no fan, no driver, no series wants to see their athletes go out there and put themselves in additional danger because they're not 100% racing out there. So it's one of those things where after this weekend, MotoGP, I feel they have to be looking at some sort of protocol. It would have been pretty bad if Marc Marquez had tried going out there, considering it was over 140 degrees weather the riders experienced that day. For him to try to go out there, considering he has a titanium plate and 12 screws in his arm, I think MotoGP should have said from the get-go, you got to wait at least 1 week, 7 days, sit out. You could then go into testing, come back. But 4 days after a successful surgery, yeah, he may have felt good. And definitely, I got to give Marc Marquez credit for saying, my body told me I can't do this, so I didn't do it, and I could sleep well.
Yeah, well said. I actually have a lot of respect for Marc Marquez, for trying his hardest to get back out there because he's a competitor and a champion. Marquez, he really doesn't want to lose out in the championship fight in MotoGP, and he thought he was ready to go, but in reality he really wasn't. And I do think that a lot more racing series need to step in to save the drivers or riders from themselves for their own good, because if a race car driver is not out there and they don't need to be out there, they can potentially not only be a danger to themselves but also be a danger to others. And going back to the Greg Moore story, Greg Moore died on October 31st, 1999, and at the time I was only an infant at 5 months and 13 days old. And so I never got to see Greg Moore race. And, with me being 5 months and 13 days old, hopefully that doesn't make you feel too old, Joe, because you were only 15 years old in 1999 when Greg Moore sadly passed away. Do you recall the circumstances of his crash at Auto Club Speedway, and how has the sport evolved since that sad day?
I do recall that day and that weekend. When I was 15 years old, I was really getting hooked into the kart series, especially when they were at Michigan and now California Speedway, now known as Auto Club Speedway. Going about 240 miles per hour, almost full throttle throughout the entire course, that was just so exciting. And I remember watching RPM tonight leading up to the race because it was the championship battle between Dario Franchitti and a rookie named Juan Pablo Montoya for Chip Ganassi Racing. We knew Greg Moore was going to be out of the player's seat, likely going to Roger Penske's team. Saturday, I was watching qualifying when Jan Bikas spoke to Greg Moore and asking, is this really a good idea? Should you be out there racing tomorrow? And Greg Moore said, well, sometimes we don't make the best decisions, but as a racer, I want to go out there and race. Yes, we know Cart, the medical director, cleared him. He had an improvised brace steering wheel to go out there and race. But still, there's a lot of question as did that play a factor in him losing control exiting turn 2? It was only 10 laps into the race. There's always been a lot of speculation. I know from that day when he did pass, you have folks saying they don't feel his injuries contributed to the accident, but there's still a lot of people that ask that question. Now, as you mentioned with that Noah Gragson example, the driver is sick, or like Denny Hamlin when he was suffering some sort of eye vision problem, NASCAR seems to be right away, no, you're not racing. One of the things I would like to give NASCAR credit for with this, when you're in the playoff system, it's almost a little easier for them to say, no, you can't race, you're not medically fit, but you got a medical waiver. And with the way the system works, as long as they got a win, they're still in the playoffs. Unless they miss a playoff race, their season's not over. Whereas in Marc Marquez's case, he is now 0 points, and there's only 11 races left. So there is that pressure for a driver to compete. They want to win. They want championships. So I've definitely seen the evolution of this. I don't think we're going to see drivers risk as much as they used to back then. But that's a big picture, better for the race fans. They get to see the drivers race longer into their careers. That's better for the series. That's better for everybody in motorsports.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said right there. Like these drivers, back in the day, you used to, go to, well, fans used to go to the racetracks, watch it on TV, and then drivers, getting seriously hurt or sadly passing away. That was just a common thing in motorsports for such a long time. And now when a driver gets injured or dies, it's really a shock because safety has come so far since then. As you mentioned, drivers can race longer into their careers, when a race is happening, for the most part, you really think that everybody's going to walk away, and unfortunately, that isn't the case always. But I think we should be very proud with how far safety has come over the years and everything, because it's really sad thinking about that. In order to save a lot of lives, a ton of tragedies had to happen. And Marc Marquez from MotoGP is still planning on returning to action at the Czech Grand Prix on August 9th.
Earlier this week, Jimmy Johnson had the opportunity to finally test the NTT IndyCar Series car that he's been wanting to. This occurred at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Jimmy Johnson had been posting all over social media about his opportunity to test. But today we got some big news coming from Ed Carpenter Racing. Ed Carpenter Racing announced that Cole Pearn, the championship crew chief for Martin Truex Jr. and Furniture Row Racing, will be joining their team, especially to focus on their efforts to win the 104th running of the Indianapolis 500. Now, Kobe, Ed Carpenter Racing always brings fast cars to the speedways. Cole Pearn won the 2017 Cup Championship with Martin Truex Jr. and Furniture Row Racing, which was the underdogs of the series, single car team. Yes, they had the technical lines, but still, they were the underdog team, and they really excelled. So he certainly brings a lot of experience to the ECR IndyCar program. How do you think Pearn will fit in the program and the team coming out of the world of stock car racing?
And it's funny that you mentioned, Cole Pearn was a crew chief for the underdog team Furniture Row Racing, and it's quite ironic because he's gonna be serving as lead engineer for who many consider as the top underdog of the IndyCar series in Connor Daly. And I'm not really sure what Cole Pearn's background is in engineering and all of that, like in terms of open wheel racing. But he certainly is a smart guy, knows his stuff, as you can see how well how he elevated Martin Truex Jr. in the Furniture Racing program, and then when he spent time with Truex at Joe Gibbs Racing as well. I definitely think that Cole Pearn is definitely one of the smartest minds in motorsports, and it should definitely take him no time at all to transition, to engineering an IndyCar with Connor Daly, and I really think that he'll be an asset to the Ed Carpenter Racing IndyCar program during the month of August.
It'll definitely be really exciting to see during the month of August what's going to happen with that. Cole Pern, he comes with a lot of experience. I think he's going to definitely be an asset to that team and maybe just give that extra little push to get them in victory lane. And that'll be a really popular win if Connor Daly can pull that off. Now, speaking about popular, Jimmie Johnson, all his posts yesterday were really gaining traction all over social media. People were sharing them. People saw Jimmy. Jimmy looked generally thrilled, happy, and was having a good time testing that Indy car. I know a lot of people are going to be curious to see Jimmie Johnson going forward. Did all the posts yesterday look like Jimmy not only was having a blast and a really good time, but definitely be a positive boost for him going to the rest of the 2020 NASCAR Cup Series schedule?
Well, I mean, we would have to hope so because Jimmie Johnson's final year as a full-time NASCAR Cup driver hasn't exactly gone as well as many would have imagined, and definitely when things aren't really going well, and when it seems like one bad thing is happening after another, sometimes you need to take a step back and just find something to make you smile. And seeing all the footage from his IndyCar test yesterday, and seeing all of the quotes of and praise from Scott Dixon of how well Jimmy caught on to driving the IndyCar and adapting to a new discipline. And then seeing the smile on Jimmy's face, I think it definitely might be a great confidence boost for him as he tries to secure a spot in the playoffs. Right now he's on the outside looking in, and maybe testing this IndyCar will give him the confidence that he needs to put together a late season playoff run as he hopes to go after that 8 Cup Series championship so he can stand alone on top of NASCAR's Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be still got a lot of time to try to get a win. Of course, the big thing for him is going to be the competition as well and just trying to gain some of that positive momentum. I do see once he gets positive momentum, he could get a win, get that 8th championship possibly. It's going to be really hard. Get into the playoffs, a lot of folks are pulling for him. I think he still got a chance. That championship, it's going to be really interesting to see if he could do that. Now, next year, of course, if Jimmie Johnson does part-time Cup schedule and part-time IndyCar schedules, if he does more than 5 races next year, he will be eligible for the World Motorsport League standard. Looking at the WML score as of this week, Scott McLaughlin and Scott Dixon, the 2 New Zealanders, still control the top 2 spots. But now we have Formula 2, Formula 3 racers in the mix as they have completed more than 5 races, with Robert Oscar rounding out 3rd and 4th, and then Chase from the NASCAR Xfinity Series rounding out the top 5. Then we have Jamie Whincup, David Beckman, Simon Pagenaud, Austin Cindric, and Kaluma Liliot from Formula 2 rounding up the top 10. Now, folks, be sure to follow the Grid World Motorsport League. You can find them on Twitter at grid_WML or visit gridranking.com. There you'll find a lot of links to all our social media pages where you can follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and everything, all right there on our website.
Yeah, and next we're gonna switch gears to Formula E. We're gearing up for an epic week-long fest of 6 races in 9 days. This, of course, is a result of the pandemic postponing the season since March. Formula E has taken it to the next level with 9 races, 6 days, 3 different courses, and at the end, 1 champion. And we're taking this opportunity to bring a higher level of motorsports coverage for this week-long festival of racing as we are teaming up with Formula E Zone to bring special coverage of the Formula E Fest. And Formula E Zone can be found at their website, formulaezone.com. And while on their website, check out their digital magazine. Really great stuff coming from Jack and the entire team. Be sure to find all the festivities by using the hashtag Formula E Fest. And also, fan boost voting is underway for the Berlin E Prix. And also, Mercedes has changed their Formula E car from silver to black, matching the Mercedes Formula One cars, and to continue the message of standing against racism. And Joe, what do you think of the livery?
Definitely, I think it's really beautiful. I know we got it right here on the screen. I mean, it's a really great looking car, and one of the big things about it essentially we're seeing Mercedes continuing their message of end racism, not only in Formula One, but in Formula E. And as we mentioned a couple of episodes ago, when they announced a black livery in Formula One, how this is very huge, especially in the big picture. Of course, Mercedes, the silver arrows, they have always been the silver arrows, whether it was in sports car Formula One back in the 50s, when they came back to Formula One. So for the history books, when we see this black livery, there's a story behind it in which race fans can tell future generations that story behind that black livery, and it just looks really sweet on that Formula E car.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see the Mercedes, is not only standing against racism with their Formula One program, but Formula E as well. And I just think it just shows, that more people are starting to take a step back, and when they don't know enough about a current situation, they will take the time to listen and educate themselves. And it's good to see that the entire, Mercedes brand is been a leader among the other manufacturers and taking a stand against racism, and it's just been a wonderful sight to see, and it gets me really excited about the future of motorsports as we strive for more inclusiveness and diversity.
Definitely would be really exciting to see, and especially seeing them take a stand for a more inclusive environment in motorsports. Now, one of the big things, of course, this year, as much as we are talking about making motorsports more inclusive, been a little bit odd because of the pandemic situation where we have no fans at a majority of events globally. One of the big concerns that came out was from Insider.com. Released on Friday last week, Insider.com reports the garage environment in NASCAR isn't taking the protocol measures in place by NASCAR as seriously as maybe they should. According to the article, many believe the pandemic is nothing more than just a flu virus, only adhering to the mandates because NASCAR has stated the mandates and the potential risk of fines. Now, Tom Bryant, NASCAR's managing director of racing operations, has stated in the article that there is no perfect answer to the pandemic situation and trying to resume racing, and that series is essentially learning as it goes. Now, it wasn't long ago, NASCAR sent a memo to all the teams reminding everyone about the importance of wearing a mask and social distancing, and prevented a potential shutdown of the season if there is an outbreak. Does it appear that there's a disconnect between NASCAR concerns and the personnel following the measures that are in place by NASCAR?
Well, Joe, since I can't be at the track, I can't really say for sure what goes on there because obviously it doesn't look like I'm not gonna be at the track at all in 2020. But based on that piece from the Business Insider, it's definitely really concerning. That all of the protocols that NASCAR laid out aren't being enforced as they should. And if there is truly a problem going on, hopefully NASCAR would enforce those rules to ensure that everyone is safe. And I understand, so far we haven't seen, like, well, in the national news, we haven't seen anything linking NASCAR races to super spreader events, as the health experts like to call them. And NASCAR's had fans at tracks. I remember the big crowd was at Bristol for the All-Star race, and then you had fans at Texas as well. And as of right now, we would just have to wait to see, if people who attended the track, got sick, and we don't know, like, how many people in the NASCAR industry have gotten sick from the virus yet. And I'm sure if there was a lot of people getting sick, who attended these races, we would definitely hear about it in the news media. And as of right now, we haven't heard anything at all.
Yeah, no news. I know Bob Pockris, I believe, on Twitter posted that he had been in contact with the state of Tennessee, state of Texas, about any numbers, and they're not seeing any sort of spike in cases. Now, recently, though, here in the United States, Major League Baseball has started up, and the Miami Marlins had massive amount of COVID-19 cases in which multiple players reportedly tested positive, putting on hold the Miami Marlins schedule and leaving a lot of questions about the remaining baseball season, and some fans even being critical about MLB's handling of the situation. Meanwhile, we are seeing leagues such as the National Basketball Association, the WNBA, Women's National Basketball Association, and Major League Soccer all have a bubble environment in which the players are isolated, where they are not seeing people from outside the bubble. They're all tested daily, all essentially quarantined in their little world of sports. Should NASCAR take a firmer stance to ensure the safety of their teams, drivers, so there is no outbreak and not risk the rest of the season?
Yeah, and as you know, NASCAR sent a memo to the teams a little while ago saying, like you need to do what you're supposed to be doing because one outbreak can derail our season, and that very well could happen. Obviously, so far, when the cameras are on, when we're all watching the race on TV, we see everybody wearing their masks and doing what they're supposed to be doing. But also, when the cameras aren't on, we don't know what's going on because they're not at the track. And I do think that when somebody is breaking the protocols that could potentially endanger the season, I think NASCAR definitely needs to enforce the rules, and all of that, and how they were saying how they would find people for breaking these protocols and stuff. If you see somebody breaking a protocol, fine them. Like do it. Somebody may need to be an example if something goes wrong. NASCAR, put your foot down, make an example out of somebody, and then everybody else, will listen because, as the memo said, an outbreak could derail the rest of the season. And that would be very unfortunate for everyone involved. And you mentioned the bubble, as we've seen, with the NBA and all of that. I'm not really sure if a bubble would be possible or even work in NASCAR. If we put all these drivers, in a bubble, they wouldn't be able to like do other things that you see. Since they had a little off time after the Thursday night Cup race at Kansas, so some of the drivers, up in Colorado, you know, and then Bubba Wallace and his girlfriend Amanda, were on vacation, and then Jimmy Johnson was at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course testing with Ganassi. If they put NASCAR drivers in a bubble, none of that would be possible. That it would be like being, and I don't even know how these NBA players are gonna handle being in a bubble. You're in isolation and all of that. I'm just not. I'm not really sure how that would work in NASCAR, and also when it goes to testing, to ensure that nobody's transmitting the virus in the garage. Like one of my biggest fears right now, if we started like testing everybody in the industry, I'm fearing we might find some cases already in the garage. I haven't heard anything about people getting sick, but as there's people who are asymptomatic, and I'm afraid we might have some cases then, and then if that gets out, then it's not going to be a good look at all for NASCAR at all, especially on the national stage. So I definitely think that NASCAR needs to keep enforcing to the people in the industry, make smart decisions, do what you're supposed to do, and we can get to the end of the season, and then 2020, when the season is over, hopefully it'll just be a distant memory, and when 2021 rolls around, hopefully we can start, getting back to some more normalcy and having more fans in the stands, and not having to worry about all of the stuff happening right now in the world.
Yeah, it'll be something else where if we could get to that point where we see fans in the stands and more normalcy again. Big thing going on right now, especially NASCAR. They have the rules. It does seem like they really need to show that they are enforcing it. We know we've seen some cases where Chase Elliott went to high five fan members. We saw Noah and Burton get in an altercation without wearing masks. Well, Burton was wearing a mask, but not Noah. So there's a lot of cases where people are been looking, pointing out, and I think it is something on NASCAR to respond and say, hey, one outbreak could derail the entire season and all the work we put in. Of course, I don't think any series had, prior to 2020, a response to the pandemic plan. So I do give NASCAR the benefit of being the first one to come back, having a plan, but definitely seems like a kind of plan where they have to keep working on and especially improving as the racing continues.
Yeah, definitely. Kudos to NASCAR. Been the first major sports series to return the action, and it seemed NASCAR. Somebody had to be first to do it, and NASCAR stepped up and returned the racing on May 17th at Darlington, and since then it seems like everything's been going smooth for the most part, and hopefully people continue to follow all of NASCAR's guidelines, and when they're not at the track, taking all of the precautions that health professionals tell us to do, to ensure that you're not going to, bring the virus back to the garage and get someone really sick, because that would be a really sad situation. And to end our program tonight, we're gonna do some quick takes with news that happen around the motorsports world. And for starters, Bob Pockers reported yesterday that NASCAR members traveling to New Hampshire have been granted a waiver from the 2-week quarantine requirement, but they cannot be anywhere else besides New Hampshire Motor Speedway and the hotel. All industry members are barred from restaurants and bars, but takeout and delivery orders are okay.
Multiple media outlets are reporting the potential return of the Turkish Grand Prix for the FIA Formula One season. Now, the last time Formula One did race at the Istanbul Park in Turkey was 2011. Now, while many fans have taken on some social media to express their excitement about seeing this track return to the Formula One schedule, a lot of people are participating in another social media quote, the hashtag challenge accepted, unquote. This is a response to the country of Turkey and the femicide problem. This has raised up after a 23-year-old student, a female student, was murdered. In 2019, 474 women were murdered, mostly by their partners and relatives in the country of Turkey. Many are calling for the Turkish government to respond and take a stand against the widespread violence towards women. So while a lot of folks are looking at the return of the Turkish Grand Prix, there is this challenge accepted hashtag going around in which people are bringing to light the problems in the country of Turkey as well.
Thanks to IndyCar's new program called Race for Equality and Change, a young black driver named Miles Rowe completed a test session driving a USF 2000 car at the IMS road course. And according to Marshall Pruitt from Racer.com, Rowe impressed current IndyCar star Will Power. We'll keep following this story to see if Rowe will receive more opportunities to test or even compete in open wheel races in the junior categories.
NASCAR Xfinity driver Chase Briscoe will be competing in this weekend's IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge race at Road America. This is very significant because the following week, Chase will be in the Xfinity Series competing at Road America. With the lack of practice and qualifying, since NASCAR is not doing that, this gives him the advantage of getting some laps at Road America. I'll be really interested to see what happens in the following weeks.
On Instagram, six-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton revealed that he is the mystery rapper known as XNDA, who worked with Christina Aguilera on her song titled Pipe. Hamilton says that he's been working with music for the past 10 years, and while he doesn't have a project or an album yet, he said he has some different songs that he would like to share with us now in hopes that others will be able to connect with his music. And does this mean that Lewis Hamilton has a future in the music industry as a rapper? And I don't know that, but right now we're just gonna have to wait and see how the future stacks up for the Formula One legend.
Tony Stewart's brand new series, Superstar Racing Experience, which he is also working with Ray Everhand, announced Paul Tracy as the third driver to compete in this brand new series. The series, of course, will be similar to IROC, in which all the cars are equal. The drivers are all going to be paired up with a random crew chief, and it's going to take place in the summer of 2021 with CBS Sports covering the racing. Now, Tracy joined Tony Stewart himself and IndyCar veteran Tony Kanaan as the three drivers so far announced. More drivers will be announced following, and we'll be following that story as well.
And we want to give everyone a friendly reminder that on Friday, Life on the Grid will premiere. We will interview Speedway Digest's motorsports journalist, Brett Winningham, and we have a special musical performer, short blonde singer Sarah Brown, who will perform her newest song. And please join us Saturday at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific, for the Grid Live pre-race show as we preview the NASCAR and Formula One races. Plus, we'll have a special guest. Jack from Formula E Zone will join us to preview our new program of Formula E Fest. And then on Sunday evening, join us for the Grid Live post-race show following the conclusion of the final races of the day. And on behalf of me Joe Samaniego, and here at the Grid Network, we want to wish you a wonderful night.